Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. Well, are you ready for the biggest slam of the summer? It's only SummerSlam 2019, folks, from Toronto, Canada. Let's get right into it with the first match of the kickoff show as Drew Gulak, Drew Goo, defends the Cruiserweight Championship against Oney Lorcan. This match was a slower Cruiserweight match than I think what many people who watch just the pay-per-views are accustomed to. There's really no high-flying or flips to speak of. It's submissions versus strikes. It's primarily the game plan for each guy going into it. We get a great counter here. At one point, Drew's on top of Oney with some smacks. Oney gets up to try and rage up, basically, that unbridled rage they keep talking about, and Drew just catches him right in the Gulak. Lorcan with a great counter into a pinfall, but a kick out. Gulak grabs the ring apron, getting dragged into the ring as the referee puts it back. Gulak with a shot to the throat. He just basically caned him. Cyclone crash, and Drew retains the championship. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars. It's a match that, you know, it had very minimal build to begin with because Oney only won the #1 contendership on the go-home week on 205 Live. It was a good match, but for the Cruiserweight Championship and what we were accustomed to, like I said, seems there have been a lot of other matches before it with a lot more drama and excitement. This was a very well executed, very well wrestled match, just didn't have the same kind of drama and excitement that other Cruiserweight matches that I've seen lately have. The next pre-show match is Apollo Crews taking on Buddy Murphy. It's Buddy's first on-air match since being called to SmackDown way back in April during the initial Superstar shakeup. Oh, those were the glory days. It's a really good match here by both guys. It's basically the match we didn't get with the previous Cruiserweight title match, because this one's got all the flips and everything that we did not see with Gulak versus Lorcan. One thing I noticed from watching this match, it says something about, I guess you could call it the redundancy of segmenting a 205 Live roster as opposed to the rest of the main roster, because Buddy Murphy has got a couple of inches and looks very similar in size to Apollo Crews, who is listed as a heavyweight while Buddy Murphy is a former Cruiserweight champion. Yeah, there's such a lack of disparity in size between a lot of the mid-carders and lower-carders on the main roster. You get the fact that AJ Styles only maybe has like 10 pounds on the average Cruiserweight below that weight cutoff for 205 Live, and he's one of the top guys in the company. It's just crazy to me how they play with the rules for, like, well, what makes someone a Cruiserweight? A Cruiserweight's someone who's small, but we also don't want to put in the main roster just yet. That's kind of like where I think the 205 Live guys are at the moment here. Anyway, the match ends when Rowan interrupts the proceedings and beats Murphy up on the outside. Obviously, payback for selling him out last week on SmackDown, pointing the finger at him for being the one to attack Roman Reigns the last couple of weeks. I give the match 1 star out of 4. It was a good showing by both guys. The ending of the match was what it was. I will say it's nice to see some storyline progression on the kickoff show that's not just match. To have something like that with Rowan coming in, I think, is a nice little wrinkle and basically helps progress the story going into SmackDown this week. In your pre-show main event, the new women's tag team champions Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross defending as the former champs, the IIconics, in the one and only tag team match you will find all night at SummerSlam. I love on the entrances, you've got Alexa Bliss with the Buzz Lightyear themed attire, and you've got Billie Kay with the Maleficent horns in her entrance. How come only one person from each team decided to do Disney cosplay? Did the other partners not get the memo? Early in the match, Alexa Bliss does like the Buzz Lightyear laser arm thing to her opponent, and Corey Graves with some pretty heavy-handed healing on Alexa, basically scolding her for how dare she do something kind of like amusing and entertaining in the match. She's supposed to be the goddess, and boy, he lays it on thick. You could spread that on some toast. It's so thick, the amount of disdain that Corey Graves is having for Alexa here, and it's so confusing. So wait, Alexa and Nikki are now baby faces? Like, since when? Like, nothing about the last couple of weeks to me has shown any sign of like, oh, they're faces now. What was the catalyst? What was the tipping point that made these two ladies baby faces? Except for the fact that Nikki was kind of a tweener when she was first aligned with Alexa. I guess at this point they expect us to stop asking. Peyton with the cool spot of the match. She catches Alexa's kick and turns into a widow's peak, but Alexa hits the right hand and the twisted Bliss. The faces, question mark, win the match. I give the match 2 stars. It wasn't a bad match, but it wasn't an amazing one either. Just good to see some tag team representation on the show, but I'm just really confused about the dynamic now with Alexa and Nikki, because I was confused going into it. Wait, why is it heel versus heel teams? And then as soon as I thought that, that's when Corey just started going on his rant against Alexa Bliss. I'm like, oh, I guess it's face versus heel depending on how the plot works. It was at SummerSlam 1 year ago that set in motion the entire crazy year Becky Lynch has been ever since. The heel turn that fans refused to let stick, and now Becky is one of the biggest stars in the entire company, male or female. She's opening the show officially here in a submission match for the Raw Women's title title, defending against Natalya. The big story here is that the friendship is imploded. It's a match for respect. I did love this hype package. It really does a good job kind of condensing and retelling the story and framing it very, very well. I definitely listened for the reactions and the intros for this match because Becky Lynch, who's been mostly a babyface for the last several months, and although it's been kind of waffling back and forth in the build for this particular match, she was received pretty positively. Natalya obviously gets a bigger ovation because she's, coming back to her home country for this matchup. The most interesting reaction for me was when Becky's name was announced in the formal introductions. There was a bit of a pop, and then it turned to boos for a second, and then it became a Becky chant. I was very confused by that. Also very confused as to why these two ladies just chose to wear almost the exact same outfits in this matchup. They both had like the shiny black latex or leather with the shiny spikes all over it. Very similar attires here, and so kind of made it difficult at times for either woman to stand out. Natalya fights the armbar for a good minute in the ring, lots of chaining to the outside of the ring. Natalya works the leg. We get a sharpshooter through the turnbuckles, which was a complete, I love that spot. To me, it was kind of a new spin on when her uncle, Bret Hart, would do the figure 4 leg lock to someone around the ring post. And a sharpshooter through the turnbuckle was pretty cool. These two just beat the hell out of each other. Becky with a sharpshooter as well. Oh, the heat! Natalya counters the disarm her, which does not have the same kind of zest as the sharpshooter by Becky in Canada, but it's still good. Sharpshooter by Natalya to a big pop, but Becky is able to fight her way out of the submission. She gets the disarm her locked in on Natalya, who taps out. Becky Lynch retains the championship. I give this one 3.5 stars. It's a hell of an opener. The only reason I didn't give it 4 stars because in my opinion, I think the wrong woman won. And I know it's kind of a weird reason to knock a match. And I know that in my predictions video, I said Becky was going to win, but man, the way they told the story and the way the match went, it was really hard for me not to root for Natalya by the end of the match. I think, God, they're actually going to do it. They're going to pull the trigger and give Natalya the big emotional victory in her home country. That was not what ultimately happened. Still a very entertaining matchup and a really great way to open the show. We had a strong backstage promo by Trish Stratus. Then we go into our next match as Dolph Ziggler takes on Goldberg. Yeah! Yeah! Goldberg got pyro for his entrance, which was nice. Not the last time we'll see pyro on this night. The Goldberg chants to me felt super weak during his entrance. I remember times when the Goldberg chants were deafening as his music played. Not the case here. It did pick up a little bit after the bell rang, though. Ziggler with a big surprise. 2 super kicks, 2 kickouts. He goes for another one. He hits a spear, a jackhammer. Was there any doubt? Goldberg wins this one in pretty quick time. I give the match 1 star out of 4, if only because of the shock value at the beginning of the match when Ziggler hits the super kick out of nowhere. Makes you think for a brief, fleeting moment the result might be a bit different than what you expected. After the match, though, Goldberg starts to walk away, and Ziggler grabs a mic and taunts Goldberg, goading him back into the ring, saying, "You are not man enough. You don't have the guts to face me man-to-man," which he literally did, though, so I don't know what he's talking about. Goldberg gets back in the ring, hits another spear, another terrific sell by Ziggler. Goldberg leaves. Ziggler calls him out again. Goldberg comes back out, sets him up, and then hits another spear after hitting the ropes a couple of times. And again, Ziggler with the bumps of the night hitting these spears and making them look like $1 million. I loved it. But that's pretty much it. I actually give it an extra half star for the extra mustard on that spear. But what is going on with Dolph Ziggler right now? Has he snapped? Is this like a face turn? Is he Mankind all of a sudden? Where he's like, he just keeps getting up from these ridiculous moves? I'm really confused, a little curious to what's going on here. We will have to see. Backstage, the New Day are visited by Toronto's own Drake, Maverick that is. Then we go to the US Championship match as AJ Styles defends against Ricochet, who's dressed as Nightwing for the evening. I love this outfit by him here. R-Truth and Carmella are in announcers row in disguise as British seeming announcers based on their accents. I loved it. Ricochet with a Hurricane Rana early on Styles after walking on Anderson and Gallows' shoulders. That was so creative. AJ works Rico's leg for the bulk of the match. We had a calf crusher by AJ near the end into an Anaconda Vice, which was great. The match ends when AJ catches Ricochet in midair from a twisting senton. He lands like a powerbomb, though. Styles hits the Styles Clash, and that's the match. I know I kind of breezed through it there. There's a lot more to it, but trust me, you should go anywhere to see this one. I give it 3 stars out of 4. These two continue their excellent work together in the series of matches they've been having over the last couple of months. After the match, though, the club keep beating, or the OC, I should say, keep beating Ricochet up. He gets hit with a Magic Killer. So Ricochet, Nightwing, whatever you want to call him, he is down for the count. Is this the official end of the feud between Ricochet and AJ? Time will tell, but I mean, it seems pretty definitive for Styles to basically have won the series the way he did. We get a backstage bit between the Street Profits, and then Ric Flair shows up and they all kind of dance together. This was very interesting. It was kind of like WrestleMania light in a way, where you saw a lot of cameos, not just like the legends and Hall of Famers who are in the ring on this night, but you also saw a couple of cameos from other, legends throughout the show. Like, oh, here's Edge spearing Elias in the pre-show. Here's Ric Flair dancing with the Street Profits. I guess in a way, it's probably like the best balance they could do of like, here's kind of like the old guard, here's the newer wrestlers and stuff getting their time to shine and working together, as long as it's not a repetitive thing of it's always the legends beating down the younger people and the new generation. I think I'm a little more willing to accept that. Bayley defends the SmackDown Women's Championship against Ember Moon up next. The one thing I noticed from this matchup here, it's face versus face, and boy it shows, because the fans do not know really how to respond to what's going on in the ring. The match is executed well enough, but I think, the fans weren't really into it because we hadn't really seen anything from the last couple of weeks to really give us a reason to care about this match. Face versus face matches, or heel versus heel for that matter, are very, very difficult to book and tell a story that makes fans want to be invested in it and really get them into it on an audible level. By the end of the match, it actually did get interesting, as at one point Ember goes to the Eclipse, Bayley with a super belly-to-belly to win the match and retain the championship. But beyond that point at the end, there really wasn't much to this. I give it 1 star out of 4. I think it is the most disappointing match of the night when you just look at everything on paper. I think, Ziggler, Goldberg, I wasn't expecting a great match out of that one. This one, I was expecting better, expecting more. I wanted the spice. I mentioned in my predictions video, I figured there's enough going on with like how Bayley's getting kind of her edge here against Ember. There's going to be a little bit of spice in this matchup, but there was no spice. It was a very bland, flavorless dish here in this match. Kevin Owens takes on Shane McMahon, and if Kevin loses here, he is forced to quit the company. Rather large ovation for Kevin, of course, in his home country. Shane makes Elias the guest enforcer. He was just licking the wounds from being speared by Edge earlier in the night. Shane's got this power to make Elias the enforcer. Why not just make him the regular referee? Anyway, Elias is just all over the place here. He's on the apron, distracting the referee. He attempts KO to hit Shane with a steel chair to get him disqualified. He drags Kevin out of the ring during the 3 count. Eventually, both officials are taken out after a dive by Owens on the outside. KO beats the hell out of Elias with the chair before ejecting him, so to speak. Kevin distracts the referee with the chair, which allows him to take Shane to Dick Kick City. Big ol' stunner, and Kevin Owens wins and vanquishes Shane McMahon. Not much to the actual match itself. A lot of shtick here. It was basically the story of Elias kind of causing mayhem for Kevin Owens and basically showing him essentially taking out 2 guys at once, Elias and then Shane McMahon. I felt serious vibes. This was like, I don't know, I got serious, WrestleMania 15 vibes out of this match for me. Like X-Pac and Shane McMahon. One of the first matches Shane ever had where he was primarily running away, doing some punches, and that was pretty much it. Shane looked probably his weakest in this matchup here with Kevin Owens, which is fine. I don't want him to be Superman, but this was just, it was kind of a stark contrast to what we've seen Shane doing in the last several months here. It was probably the most toothless he'd looked here against Kevin. And so Kevin, a lot of shtick, but it was a good story with a satisfying conclusion of Kevin finally beating Shane and shutting his mouth up, hopefully for a little while. In what's being billed as sort of a generational dream match, Charlotte Flair takes on Trish Stratus. The fans, I don't know if this is a sign of them not really being invested in this match, or maybe they're just super amped about it and feeling very nationalistic toward Trish Stratus, because the crowd sing the Canadian national anthem as the match actually begins. Early on, Trish looking impressive against Charlotte, almost a bit too impressive. I think the issue here with me at this moment here, when Trish is getting her heat early on, Trish looks like supremely confident, like a Wonder Woman or something, and Charlotte is like almost given way too much emotionally, going like, no! Like she's like freaking out over, this very early on stuff where the match hadn't really developed yet. I think Charlotte was getting a bit too much in the body language and selling department when it comes to that kind of reaction. Trish does look impressive, but she face plants on the steel steps on the outside. Charlotte working Trish over for several minutes, trash talking all the while. It almost gets to the point where it drags things down, but Trish makes a comeback, gets kicked off the apron, lands hard on her like butt or lower back. That looked supremely painful. I just visualized broken tailbone. I winced watching her take take that tumble onto her lower side there. Charlotte misses the moonsault. Trish has a big-ass Hurricane Rana. We got a night of stolen finishers here. Trish has got the figure 4 and eventually the figure 8 onto Charlotte. And a fun fact here, Corey wisely points out in commentary, Trish's shoulders are down the entire time she has the figure 4 locked in Charlotte, and the referee did nothing about it. Charlotte kicks out of the Stratus faction and the chick kick. Charlotte with the boot and the figure 8. Trish taps out. I was honestly not expecting this match to be as good as it was. I think I was really caught off guard early on, but as time went on and they told the story of Trish getting beat down, finally finding that one sliver of hope, Charlotte slipping on the banana peel, allowing Trish to make that valiant comeback, then things got really interesting and really ramped up from there. Like I said, I was not interested in this match going into it, but they had my interest in a big way near the end. So Trish looking very valiant here, and for a match, she hadn't had a singles match in quite a while. For her to really hold her own here and have a really entertaining match with Charlotte, she's clearly still got it. Do I want to see her, make a full-time comeback? I'm not entirely sure. I think it was still a very entertaining matchup, and I think that's kind of more passing of the torch to Charlotte and really kind of cementing her place in the company as one of the top females. WWE Championship time as Kofi Kingston defends against Randy Orton in a match with more than a decade in the making or so. I love the New Day's old school Raptors-inspired gear here as they make their way out. We get a Kofi's stupid chant from the audience playing up to the past comments Randy Orton made in the ring to Kofi so long ago. A lot of technical issues for me as this match is going on. I know a lot of people had issues with the feed maybe around this time. It was pretty distracting, kind of hard to really kind of parse what was going on in the matchup. Just had to jump around a lot trying to get, at one point my video and audio was out of sync. A lot of technical issues, but I was able to get the gist of the matchup here. Kofi looking very impressive after their brawl on the outside on the table. Kofi even yelling stupid at Randy. Things are coming full circle here, folks. Kofi blocks an RKO, then leaps off the top, and then eats a ridiculous RKO as he's coming down, but Orton can't capitalize. Kofi rolls out of the ring, and Kofi's family is watching, by the way, at ringside. They're in the front row for this, and Orton starts taunting Kofi's family. Kofi snaps. They start brawling more on the outside. By the way, this is a regular match, so they actually both count out. It's a double count out finish. The fans are shitting all over. There's a bullshit chant as this is going on. Kofi gets out a kendo stick, just beats the hell out of Orton, and basically stands tall at the end. I'm like, hang on, didn't we see this exact same thing play out at the end of last year's title match at SummerSlam? AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. Joe gets on the microphone and calls out, "Oh, Wendy, I'll be the new daddy," and then AJ snaps, and that's the match ends. That rings very similar to me to what we saw here. I don't really want to see a retread of the AJ Samoa Joe storyline from last year because we just fucking saw it. I don't want to see it again, especially it was like the same storyline but with different ingredients. It's basically when you're playing, not universe mode, like story mode in SmackDown 2, and the longer you play it, you get the same storylines but just with different people occasionally. That's what I got the vibe I got from this one. I give the match 2.5 stars. Very good match until the finish really soured me on it. Like, obviously they're building to a rematch and maybe the match quality will improve, but it's like I just felt burned out after seeing a lot of that happening with AJ's reign last year and seeing how this one ends. It's really the only minor booking hiccup that I've seen with Kofi's run as champion. For a long babyface run, it's very rare to find something as head-scratchingly booked as what we saw at the end of this match here. And I know they're trying to build to more matches down the line. I get that. I just felt that this finish was way too similar to something I just saw, and it's still kind of fresh in my mind. In what's probably one of the most highly anticipated moments of the entire show, Bray Wyatt finally has the in-ring debut of his Fiend character taking on Finn Balor. So this is the Fiend's presentation. It is very similar to the old Bray Wyatt intro in a way, where he's got, it's basically a cover of his original theme song. Everyone still has their cell phone lights out for the fireflies, and he's still at the lantern. And holy shit, let's stop and look at that lantern for a second. It's supposed to be, I'm guessing, like old Bray Wyatt severed head with his mouth pulled way open. That's some freaky shit. Like that's more horrifying than the Tom Savini mask that Bray is wearing here as his character. That is some freaky stuff. I can't believe they got away with a visual like that. Not sure how long they're going to keep that up, though. It's a pretty short match with some back and forth. Balor goes to the coup de grace, but Bray catches him with the mandible claw and puts him out with it. Bray wins here, and very spooky imagery persists after the match is over. I give this one 4 stars, and I will tell you why. Because from an in-ring standpoint, standpoint, in terms of moveset and everything, and even if you look at his intro, it's basically Bray Wyatt with a new coat of paint. He still has the lantern, still has the firefly, still has the music to a sense, and the only real difference I saw in the ring for him was the use of the mandible claw, which we've seen the last couple of weeks. But man, it's like, at the same time though, what a breath of fresh air. Because Bray Wyatt, I think above all else in the company, his character needed the most refreshing and needed the most repackaging after the last few years of what many people would call a very up and down, in some cases kind of a disappointing run. So for him to have all this hype and to have all this promise and all this intrigue around his gimmick, it is very, very different in terms of presentation and in terms of how his look and the vibe that you're put out with this. It's like a different side of Bray we're not used to. And I think they did a really good job since the weeks after WrestleMania, building up Firefly Funhouse and telling the story of the Fiend and showing him off here. I think I'm entranced by it. I'm very intrigued by it. I really want to see them do well with this. I don't know where the end game with this storyline is, but this is very interesting stuff. The visuals alone of what they're doing, they're taking some risks here. They're doing some very different things, and I'm all for it. Main event time as Brock Lesnar defends the big red belt against Seth Rollins in a bit of a WrestleMania rematch. For the first few minutes, Seth is beaten up a lot by Brock here, but he busts out a stomp out of nowhere, a couple more super kicks. Lesnar drops him with the F5, some more suplexes, and poor Lesnar in that ring post. Truly, this is the biggest rivalry in WWE at the moment, more than any other interpersonal rivalry. It's clearly Lesnar versus the ring post. Brock dominates Seth for a while. Seth dodges an avalanche into the corner, and Brock goes down. Many dives. Brock catches the third one, though, and he goes right into the ring post. Seth kicks Brock onto an announce table, and we get a big old frog splash from the top of the post and through the table itself. We get a splash, a stomp, a kick out. Brock goes for another F5. Seth fights it off. Another super kick and a stomp. Seth wins. He regains the Universal Championship, and there's Pyro to close out the show. Oh man, what a SummerSlam. The return of Pyro. I give this match 3 stars out of 4. I think this is probably one of Brock's better matches in a great while. I think, if anything, this match validates Seth because, you know, the match they had at WrestleMania was very fluky, the way they built it, and much in the same way when Lesnar won the title back at Extreme Rules, it was through the Money in the Bank thing. And so this was kind of a nice redemption for Seth. I think after having to deal with the whole boring Baron Corbin program for a couple of months before this revival with the Brock storyline, I think, you know, Seth was in need of validation and for looking good and having a good program to work with. I was not a huge fan of the build for this match because it did feel very similar to the build we saw for the last couple of Brock Lesnar matches, like Brock versus Roman at Mania 34 and Brock versus Seth in the build for Mania 35. So I felt it was very similar in that regard. This match definitely exceeded my expectations. I was expecting kind of more of what we saw on the Go Home show for Raw this week when Brock was just brutalizing Seth again. But I think, again, told a very good story. It was a more extended version of what we saw at WrestleMania, where Seth looks really good here. And here's the thing, in a competitive match, a drawn-out match with a story arc and moments and peaks and valleys and stuff, I'm pretty sure Seth is the only person to have actually beaten Brock clean as a whistle with no outside help and no fluky McFluke victories since WrestleMania 30. I think that's the longest it's gone. Even Roman Reigns, when he beat him at SummerSlam last year, had help and a distraction from Braun Strowman on the outside. Seth did it pretty much all on his own here. So that is, again, a very big, stamp of approval, big, hero's moment for Seth here. And so I just hope the next title contender can make things interesting. I mean, ideally, I wish it to be the Fiend, because that's the only person I can see right now on Raw who can really give that Universal title program a shot in the arm. My final grade for SummerSlam 2019 is an A- grade. I figure, I gave Extreme Rules an A- as well. This show was not worse than Extreme Rules, so I had to give it at least the same grade. In terms of overall match quality, really hard to knock the majority of these matches. I think the most disappointing match was probably Ember Moon and Bayley, and also to an extent Orton and Kofi, just because of the lackluster finish. It was otherwise a fine match, but the finish really soured me. I think of all of the matches, there was only one title change, and at least I think of all of the ones that could have happened, it was the right one. Seth winning the championship back and vanquishing the Beast once again. The Fiend was so fun. Lots of potential with where that storyline is going to go. I think, yeah, all but a couple of the matches really delivered in a big way or had something going for it. Even Goldberg Ziggler, for as, whatever of the matches it was, still leaves you wondering what's going on in Dolph's head at the moment. But yeah, besides that, I think it was a SummerSlam that didn't really have a whole lot of good hype going toward it. I saw a lot of apathy and negativity going into it, and I don't know if it's the lower standards or lower expectations or what, but I think in a lot of different ways, this year's SummerSlam, really, I think it definitely exceeded the feeling and the vibe people had going into it in terms of what quality of the show was going to be. I think there were a lot of moments. I wish there was more unpredictability. I wish there were more surprises in a way. I guess it's weird to expect surprises because then they're not really surprises, but all I really want is some kind of unpredictability. And except maybe for Seth beating Brock, which I didn't expect, there wasn't a lot of that going on. And also, what the fuck is going on with Bray's lantern? That's so creepy. But let me know what you thought of SummerSlam in the comments section below. Give it a letter grade by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.